On the night of June 25, 1975, the government severed the power supply to the newspaper printing presses in Delhi. While the city slept, the blackout provided cover for a coordinated sweep. By morning, major opposition leaders across the country were sitting in jail cells, arrested without warning. The legal justification for this sudden crackdown came from Article 352 of the Indian Constitution. It allows a prime minister to advise the president to declare an emergency under 3 specific conditions. The first 2 conditions cover war and external aggression, reasons used during the border conflicts of 1962 and 1971. This time, the government invoked the third, domestic clause. To see how a democratically elected prime minister managed to suspend the fundamental rights of her citizens, we have to rewind 6 years. The path to this midnight decree began with years of escalating legal conflict between the Prime Minister and the Supreme Court. In 1969, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi unilaterally nationalized 14 private banks, abruptly transferring their ownership to the government. The decision wiped out private shareholder value overnight. Facing fierce resistance from investors, the government bypassed a looming parliamentary session and rushed a presidential ordinance to force the law into effect. The shareholders took the fight to the Supreme Court and won. The court ruled the law was discriminatory and struck down the government's ordinance entirely. The exact sequence repeated shortly after. The government attempted to abolish the Privy Purse, a series of guaranteed payments to India's former royal families. Again, the Supreme Court declared the move null and void. Stung by these consecutive defeats, the government responded by passing constitutional amendments. These new laws were designed to ensure the executive branch could overrule the judiciary's interpretations of policy. While the government secured power in the courts, the national treasury was buckling. The 1971 conflict with Pakistan left the Indian economy in a fragile state. Then, in 1973, an international oil crisis hit. The post-war economy was pushed to the breaking point. Global crude prices spiked 300%. The cost of essential commodities skyrocketed, and ordinary citizens bore the brunt of domestic inflation. Under this extreme financial pressure, the deep-rooted corruption inside state-level governments became impossible to ignore. The combination of foreign war debts and global oil shocks created an economic trap. Localized frustrations evolved into mass public desperation across the country. That desperation erupted in Gujarat in 1974. During the Navnirman movement, students took over the streets and successfully forced the state's chief minister to resign over corruption charges. The unrest spread to Bihar. Jaya Prakash Narayan, known as JP, galvanized millions into nonviolent protests, demanding the dissolution of the state government. At the same time, union leader George Fernandez organized a railway strike involving 1.7 million workers, paralyzing the nation's transport infrastructure. The breaking point arrived in June 1975, delivering a legal blow from the Allahabad High Court directly to the Prime Minister. Investigating a case filed by election rival Raj Narayan, the court convicted Indira Gandhi of electoral malpractice. The ruling unseated her from her position in the Lok Sabha. Seizing the momentum, J.P. Narayan rallied the public, demanding the Prime Minister's resignation and calling for total civil disobedience. He issued a specific instruction. He urged the Indian police and the armed forces to refuse any orders given by the government. This direct appeal for military disobedience provided the exact legal pretext the government needed. It was classified as an internal disturbance, triggering the Midnight Decree. For the next 21 months, fundamental rights were suspended. Over 100,000 citizens, including opposition leaders like Morarji Desai, were jailed. Civil society was suppressed. Dissenting politicians were forced to resign, and organizations like the RSS and Jamaat-e-Islami were banned. The government also initiated a mass sterilization program, directed by the Prime Minister's son, Sanjay Gandhi. Men were forcefully sterilized in unsafe conditions to reduce population numbers. Despite these realities, some industrialists initially praised the regime. Businesses ran efficiently, and the trains kept their schedules. But this efficiency was forced. The trains only kept their schedules because strikes and protests preceding the emergency had been crushed by the state. Pacing slows, resolving. In March 1977, after 21 months, the emergency was finally lifted, and new general elections were announced to the public. The public rejected the regime at the polls. For the first time in Indian history, the ruling party was voted out, and Indira Gandhi lost her seat. The 1975 emergency remains a record of how constitutional institutions can be bypassed by decree. But in 1977, the final word belonged to the millions of citizens casting their votes.